This Thrive Loud episode is brought to you by Hinge Consulting. Success on Amazon hinges on well-executed strategies. Contact Hinge Consulting to learn about total Amazon channel management and to see if your business has what it takes to grow over 300% over the next 12 months. That's Hinge Consulting at hingeconsulting.co.
Have you been boring yourself with uninteresting podcasts made by monotone and overly serious people? Are you tired of hearing the same stuff every day on NPR? Then please consider helping us on our mission of making Thrive Loud the #1 business podcast. Because, well, let's be honest, we're #1.
Get ready to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, I bring you keynote speaker, pitching Jedi Master, brand story specialist, the Craftsman of communication, one of the funnier Tedx speech deliveries you'll ever see, and the Ginger MC, and doodling extraordinaire, and probably the most patient guest we've had on Thrive Loud because of either technical issues, crazy winter storms, even trees falling in my driveway that caused us to have to stop the previous version of this interview. So we are doing take 2, and I'm excited to have Ryan Foland on Thrive Loud. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. And you know what? I'm excited, and I am also a ginger, which means I'm very patient. So yes, you are very true.
Well, so patience is a virtue, and you are a virtue, by the way. One of the cool people I've ever met. Oh, I got a sign, and I love that. So we met not too long ago, actually, at a very cool event that was focused on really cool speakers. I'm laughing because you gave yourself the name of World of Speakers today, which I guess is what we're going to hit upon. So,
oh no, I mean that's my podcast. It just happens to be there, but yes, I'm doing my part to add to the world of speakers by talking to speakers from around the world, and you are a speaker from around the world too. So. Well, but this is your podcast. This is you're the one in control of the horse right now.
Well, actually, the reality is that I haven't been in control of anything my whole life. I just kind of go with the flow. And with that, I want to give the controls over to you. So, Ryan, share with the Thrive Loud listeners. You got a great story. You got a great message, a great way about yourself, which is pretty cool, and why we connected so well when we met in Detroit not too long ago. So share a little bit about your journey, and let's get rolling, and let's hope that no storms, no hurricane, no power outages happen from this point forward.
Well, you forget I'm in California, so the weather's always great. The sun is always there. Even if there's clouds, the sun is behind it. The water's beautiful, and the wind just sort of is perfect to create a little bit of chill and briskness in the air.
Ryan,
so we'll be fine.
Ryan, I'm raising a finger right now. Can you guess which one?
The thumb. The thumb is up. A thumbs up to you too, buddy.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, yeah, my story is unique like anyone's. And I think that at the end of the day is what I help people do is really identify and develop and craft their brand story. I am a big believer that your business means nothing if no one knows who you are. And that's so true for, leaders in companies, not just startups, not just people who want to, create some sort of digital exhaust and get noticed, but for real people doing real business who are making real changes in the world. Those changes are only as effective as the amount of reach that you get. There are so many cool people doing so many cool things and so many executives that are making massive moves in their industries. But a lot of times they have no idea how to get known outside of their company walls. And so, at the end of the day, I think that we're getting into this. I'm going to make up a word here because I do that often, a brand-o-lution.
I like that one.
Brand-o-lution, right? It's like the revolution of the personal brand. And you have, as far as the marketplace goes, there are and have always been these big behemoth traditional PR companies. And they hold the keys to doors that used to need keys, but those doors don't need keys anymore. And so it's kind of a good and a bad problem because companies and individuals who would lean on these PR companies that would have the relationships and be able to make the phone calls, there's just more people that are doing that for themselves and smaller agencies that are helping out with that. So at the end of the day, I enjoy helping people to communicate more effectively. And that comes with answering the age-old question of what do you do, all the way to why should I care?
And I like the message. And I also like one of your tactics. I want to tackle this part first, and then I want to get into some fun stuff here.
Let's tackle. This is a tackle tactic.
What word would that be? Like tactilic? I couldn't even put that together if I tried to.
Yeah, let's not do that one. Let's pass through. Third time will be the charm.
Along the numbers here, talk to me about the 313. And I find that ironic because that's actually where we met in Detroit, which is the area code. But that isn't what it's for. And I actually, so share with the listeners a little bit about this process that you have when you work with some of your clients in utilizing this tactic and technique.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do, maybe just besides sailing. Like sailing is number one and the 313 is number two, which is also confusing because I'm throwing more numbers in there. So the 313 is at the end of the day, a method that can help you communicate your ideas and yourself in a more succinct and a more clear manner in a way that gets people more excited. The 3, 1, and 3 stands for the results of the process. It helps you take your idea or your brand, yourself, and you're able to explain it in 3 sentences, then 1 sentence, and then 3 words. And that's the 313. It is a Detroit, area code. Eminem, what's up, homie? Mad respect. But I learned that the hard way as I started hashtagging 313 and I had all these people from Mission and Detroit and people using GIFs of Eminem, like, yeah, bro. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, he's cool. But wait, what? But the name actually just really arose from the end result. And it actually has become something to where people are 313'd or people say, have you been 313'd yet? You got to get 313'd. And I think that's kind of a fun concept. But really, at the end of the day, it has 3 core principles about business that are transferable to the business of yourself. Because, I really like to think of people as their own businesses. And I am so frustrated with the elevator pitch. I'm actually on a mission to eliminate the elevator pitch. Because from a communication standpoint, it's disingenuous. It's like you've got something that's rehearsed that you're just spouting out and you have a certain amount of time and it's one-sided, it's a broadcast. And for me, it doesn't really connect with people. So I had a unique opportunity of being brought to the University of California, Irvine to start their entrepreneurship program. They had no undergraduate entrepreneurship program. This is 3 or 4 years ago. So they brought me in and it was so fun to interact with thousands of students who all had these crazy, great ideas. And really, our methodology was Socratic. And that means that students would come in and say, okay, here's my idea. Do you think it's good? And we'd say, well, I don't know if it's good. Who's somebody that you could ask? And how could you find that out? How could you prove that it's good? And then they get all excited. They run out. They do some market validation. They come back. And then, their validation wasn't from us. It was from the marketplace. And here's really where it all started, because I'd sit somebody down, and whether you're a student or not, this applies to you, because I'd say, explain your idea. And then they would just go on for 5 to 10 minutes saying, okay, and you're going to tell them, here's it. It got if you've ever been in front of an eager early stage entrepreneur, it's just, it's a miraculous feat. They just can talk and eventually really confuse you more than you were before they even started talking. So the next step, I kind of, I was seeing 4, 5, 10 teams a day. And then I would say, okay, well, why don't we try this? Tell me your idea in the fewest amount of words possible. And then they would just go, oh my gosh, there's no change. They just didn't even hear it. So then I broke it down. I said, okay, let's play a little game, right? Why don't you tell me what problem you solve, but you're not allowed to tell me what you do. And then it was just dead silence. And that's really when I knew I was onto something. So the 313 is based off of 3 basic business principles. It is the problem, the solution, and the market. And I know you, Lou, and everyone's thinking, okay, that's what people have been teaching for the last 25 years. That's what all business books say. But yeah, if that's exactly what everybody needed, then nobody would have the problem right now of explaining what they do. So there has to be some tweaks. So each one of those is tweaked just a little bit, and I put constraints on them. So the concept is that no one cares what you do. Lou, I'm sorry, but I don't care what you do. Nor does anybody else. I only care about the problem that you solve. And I really care about that problem if I have it or if somebody that I love has it. And so really the most important thing you can do when you're communicating your brand or your idea to somebody is not what you do or how you do it. It's the problem that you solve. And so by helping people to put parameters and say, tell me the problem that you solve in one sentence, no more. And you can't tell me what you do. You can only tell me the problem that you solve. And it's incredible how difficult that question is. But it's difficult because you're simplifying to the most core principle of the top spot of the problem that you solve. People will say, well, I solve all these problems. And I push back and say, well, what's the biggest problem that you solve? And then, it's something to where it starts this process of communication. And I think we forget that communication is this, it's not just a broadcast, it's back and forth. And so a high overview of the 313, you state your problem that you solve in one sentence, the solution in one sentence, and the market in one sentence. And I can get into how those are tweaked, but that's everything about you or your business in 3 sentences. And then
do you find, and by the way, thank you for that. That was, and it is a really effective way to do it. It's very concise, and I could see how the initial folks you were dealing with, the entrepreneurs, had a challenge with it, because we all have challenges to try to get ourselves to be brief, be bright, and be gone. And your message really does get to that point. Do you find the bigger challenge that people have as they're trying to basically tell their brand story is getting it down to that concise level that you have it, or figuring out the answer to the question, what's the problem they solve?
Well, if you don't know the problem that you solve as a brand, as a person, as an executive, as a leader, as a teacher, as anything, then that's where it all will start or stop. Because if you are not solving a problem, people are going to be like hardly interested at all in what you do, because people want to solve problems. If you think about the monetary choices that you make in your life, most of them are spent to solve a problem. And you might argue, well, what about a $6,000 purse? That doesn't solve a problem. I would argue that it probably does, because that person, the problem might be that there's not a social status, or the problem is that they're trying to, attract a certain crowd, or the problem is that they don't feel like they're fitting in. So if you really do like a derivative on whatever it is that you're buying, that little rate of change, the spark within you is likely to solve some sort of problem that's relative to you. And it's not just the problem, because I'll help people and they will describe a problem and I will listen and I'll be like, bleh. Okay, that doesn't move me at all. So Lou, have you ever had a paper cut?
I actually, ironically, have one right now on my pinky. And I'm not even kidding. This happened, and it didn't even happen from a piece of paper. I guess we just call it a paper cut because it's very thin. It happened from the edge of this protective shield I have around my laptop, which I couldn't, in a gazillion tries of trying to do this, I couldn't have done it, but it happened, yes, accidentally. So yes, I do have a paper cut.
So what perfect. So what happened when you got that paper lab cut? Lab paper cut? Laptop paper cut? What happened?
When I got this paper cut, the first thing I said was shit.
Yep.
And then actually at that particular point, just went to the sink and cleaned it off. That was the first thing I did.
Yeah, and that's it, right? That's it. You just, shit. And then you move on with your life.
Correct.
Now, have you ever had your finger chopped off? Like actually chopped through the bone?
Fortunately, no.
Okay, now what would happen in that situation if for some reason the laptop slapped down on your finger and then it chopped your finger off? What would you do at that moment?
I think if I could act this quickly, aside from saying, ouch, shit, oh my God, grab the finger, put it in a thing of ice, run to the hospital.
Yeah, right? And anybody around you would sort of freak out and they drop everything to help.
Yes.
Now, the difference between a paper cut and a finger being chopped off is the action associated with it afterwards, right? With a paper cut, you're like, meh, okay, got it. I'm going to move on with my life. When a finger's cut off, you stop everything you're doing. You call 911. You get the finger on ice. You try to make sure you have some help. You blah, 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 right? There's a series of actions. And the same instinctual thing happens with the person who's listening to you talk. And if you describe the problem that you solve in a way that is like a paper cut, they're going to be like, man, right, that's cool. if you describe that exact same problem, but just choose words in a way that elicit more of this, pain that's actually associated with it, right? It's like, yeah, I'm solving world hunger, or, the problem is that people can't eat. Meh, paper cut. X amount of people are dying every single day, and that's called blood. So even describing the problem that you solve, you still have to make it bloody, and you have to make it so that people want to have something to do with the solution. And that starts this process that I call permission-based pitching. Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool process because too often you as a brand are trying to pitch yourself to somebody who really doesn't care because they don't have that problem. So it's a series of questions that all focus on the problem. And it's a really fun exercise to do that doesn't take really much practice. When somebody asks you, what do you do? Just try this just once. Just try it. Instead of just going into explaining what you do, tell them, you know what, this may sound funny, but it's not really what I do that's important. And if you do that, they are going to go, huh? It's going to break the frame. They're not going to be used to hearing that. They're ready for you to just babble on. And they're going to actually, first, like their eyebrows will lift. They'll be like, huh? And you say, yeah, it's not really what I do. It's the problem that I solve. And then you stop talking. You stop talking, and then you wait, and then they're going to go,
what's the problem that you solve?
What problem do you? And you're like, well, thank you, right? Because at the root of communication, Lou, the more you talk, the less people listen. And the less you talk, the more people will ask questions. And questions is the most powerful part of conversation because it creates curiosity and connection, and that's where that connectivity comes.
Okay, so I'm going to put a pause in this because I totally agree in the conversation piece. And now I'm going to spin to something that actually I just had to deal with one of my clients. And this is actually interesting because many of the listeners of Thrive Loud hear this message. And and by the way, let's go through the things I agree with. Love the brand revolution. Love the getting rid of the elevator pitch. By the way, you don't even press buttons in elevators anymore. Like they tell you which one to go in certain buildings in New York and in other cities. Right. So the elevator, no one talks to each other in the elevator. And this form of communication is spot on. When it comes to your messaging, and I mean in the nonverbal way, I'm talking about pieces of paper that are one-pagers that describe your business or yourself, websites that people go to. Can your brand-o-lution way of thinking, maybe even the 313 thing, be orchestrated into that type of messaging?
Absolutely. And I actually do 313 audits on people's websites. So 100%. The same communication method is translated to your website, to your business card, to whatever you want, because it's these three core things. If somebody looks at your website, do they understand the problem that you're solving? Do they understand what your solution is? And are they can they get an idea of who that customer is and who they're targeting? Right. Those three questions, those are the most basic principles. And it's not just for business. It's for people who are building brands, people who are, experts and nobody knows who they are. So yes. So tell me about this specific challenge or question or something that was brought up, and let's tackle it.
Oh yeah. No, well, we actually did. It was a really good one. And it was more, this particular client was rebranding and trying to distinguish themselves from all of the other, call them media and communication companies that did that. And if you went to any of these, whether it's an advertising firm, a media buying firm, media marketplace type company, they all look the same. All these sites, I mean, everything that they do, all the features, all the work that they do, the analytics, the litany of stuff, and they were trying to stand out from somebody else. And we figured out what their unique piece was, which is not only their team, but they did have some unique component to it. And the problem really was coming out, getting people's attention, but also, to your point, answering that problem. And I think when we did the due diligence of the website, like after we did some redesign stuff, what you just hit, those 3 points, they probably did 2 out of the 3 effectively. And we needed to go back and revisit it, to go back and really let's make sure we address the problem that we solve. It isn't what we do. It's the problem that we solve. And I'm just summarizing that. It's a really great thing because it was the challenge that we ran into. And many times you see lots of websites that don't do this. They really don't do a good job of drawing you in enough. And while we don't need to have the website, we can do it in a conversation. We should still have the same conversation, so to speak, visually on our phone, on our website, right? That was my point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually an interesting checks and balances that happen within those three questions when they're grouped together. And this is maybe something that takes, you could explore with your client. So when I ask people what the problem is that they solve, and imagine this client of yours and they state it, let's say that they state it in one sentence, and let's say that they state it in a bloody way, or they communicated well. I ask them, what is their solution? And let's say you know what their solution is. The checks and balances come from, does your solution solve that problem? It seems like a simple question, but oftentimes people are so caught up into these two worlds, right? Like, what is the problem that I'm solving? And then over here, here's my solution. But they don't always look to connect to make sure that it absolutely, from a communication standpoint, solves the problem. Because if your problem is X, your solution should be doing Y to solve X. And sometimes it's not as linear as that. Then there's a further checks and balances when you talk about your market. Does your market actually have that problem? And would that specific solution help that specific client to sell that or to solve that specific problem?
Right.
So they're really interconnected. And sometimes if people get stuck on stupid and they can't figure out the problem, we go to the solution. And then once they figure out the solution, you can try to reverse engineer what that problem is directly. And then you look at the market, and oftentimes people really don't pay as much attention to the market as possible. And in my mind, when you're talking about all these firms that seemed particular, okay, if you group them all together, they probably look very identical. But for the ones that are hyper targeting a certain demographic, those are probably going to be the ones that are most successful because they know psychographically that those people have that problem that these services can solve. So, hopefully I didn't get too meta.
No,
right?
and it's actually a great point. And like at the end of the day, if you make sure you address that key point first, solving the problem, and I think that there's some follow through that highlights and brings out your extraordinariness, if you would. I'll actually flip this back to you. Not only are you a craftsman of communication and a really good brand story specialist in helping people get their message correctly, you're pretty humorous. You're funny. You got a good character and message. And there's something else that you do that nobody else does. And I want the listeners to share this. Ryan has just about every day, and I don't know if it's every day, but it seems like it in social media.
It is every day. It is every day.
This guy comes out with these doodles, and they are phenomenal, very quick, almost doodling type messages that really relate to great messages that he brings out to his clients, humorous messages about the time, or maybe even about himself. You want to talk a little bit about how all this doodling came to be, because it's actually really cool. And I think one of the uniqueness is of you.
I like the word uniqueness is. So
we
that's
are
a good
coming
one.
up with so many new words. By the way, the name of this episode is going to be called BRAND-O-LUTION. I'm just going to give that the title for the subtitle of this episode. But yes, I'll push it back to you of your uniqueness.
So let me give a little quick backstory on it. And I classically, as an entrepreneur, would invest all of my effort in branding the company that I was working at, whether it was, an app development company, whether it was this, whether it was that, all these different sort of in my colorful past of entrepreneurship, it was always about branding the company. I didn't matter, right? And so I got to a spot where I was at the University of California, Irvine, running this entrepreneurship center, and everything I did was just into the center. It's all about the center. What do you do? Oh my gosh, I run this amazing center and I help these amazing students. And 18 months into that process, we were crushing it. I think we had helped over 2,400 students start companies, built a 15,000 person mailing list, helped raise tons of money for these startups and all kinds of amazing stuff. And then my boss, unannounced, asked me to go see my boss's boss, very out of the blue. And I was convinced that I was getting fired. 100%. You see, I was the kind of guy running the center to where we were making 7-foot paper airplanes, throwing them off the student center, which I always got in trouble for. I made these big costumes for people, a 7-foot Snapchat ghost that we would have students go and crash into classes. Like your classic guerrilla marketing, asking for really no permission, but a lot of forgiveness. So I was like, oh, crap, here I go. I'm going to get fired. This is whatever. So I'm listening and he goes, Ryan, we're looking, we're seeing all this stuff. And I'm like, no, sir, I can explain. And he's like, no, We love what you're doing. We don't know how you're doing it, but we love it. I was like, okay. So they literally made up a new position for me and put me in front of 26 other units on campus that were all geared towards the Division of Undergraduate Education. Flash forward to now, and I'm a manager in the office of the Vice Provost. But at that time, when I thought I was going to get fired, everything, your life flashes before your eyes. And like, where am I going to start? What am I going to do? Nobody knows who I am. Everything I've done has been invested in the center. My brand was the center for the last 2 years. Crap. And at that moment, something triggered in me. And I was like, you know what? I have to stop investing into these places that I'm working at or working for. And I have to start investing into myself. And that's where I had my first epiphany that there is a brand-O-LUTION that has to happen in my life. And from that point, all of my decisions were based on two questions. Is this on brand, and does this make me money? And those are the magical questions for everybody, by the way. Is it on brand? Yes or no? Does it make me money? Yes or no? And if it's yes to both of them, do it. If it's yes to one and no to the other, really consider it. If it's no to both of them, don't do it. So let's just blast through the rest of the story. I was at a networking party at Keith Ferrazzi's house. I met another person that was there in a bow tie. My challenge was that I was doing all this stuff on social media, but nobody was reading. I couldn't get a speaking gig if my life depended on it. This guy had 10 million reads on his content, but wasn't a strong speaker. So I went up to him afterwards. I was like, hey, I'll help you become a speaker if you can help me become a writer. And we partnered up. And 3 years later, we have Influence Tree. We love what we do because we're helping people to do what I did, which is, identify that it's the time to brand yourself and move on from there. So while you're in this process of branding yourself, you have to take an audit of what's happening. And social media is a big part of it. And Instagram, this whole thing called Instagram, I had never had an Instagram account. So I was like, I need to sign up for this. Yay, I'm going to sign up for it. And I signed up for it and I didn't know what to post. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do? So I actually went to a Tony Robbins event, Unleash Your Power Within. So amazing. I'd been a fan, but I'd never really seen him or met him or anything. And at the end of the 3 days, there was this challenge. And he challenged me to come up with two things. One thing that you can do every single day that's relatively easy. And one that's just a big, hairy goal that's going to take you years to do. And at that moment, right before I walked over the coals, I'm like, I got it. I am going to draw a damn stick figure every single day. I can do that. And I'm going to try to write my 313 book and whatever else. So every single day from that day, I started drawing stick figures. And it really just was that small daily habit. 2 years later, I've got over 600 of these things. And every day it's like a part of my day. It's one of my favorite things to do. Is just what happened today? How can I phrase it in 3 to 6 words? And then how can I visualize that with just a Sharpie marker? And so it's landed me the opportunity to illustrate books and to illustrate websites, just all kinds of cool, fun stuff. And it's a huge part of my brand. My presentations are all stick figure drawn. My business cards has it. You look and see it on my website. And the story is that once you make a decision that, it's time to focus on yourself, because when you build your brand, that never goes away. And when all of the sort of attention is on you, not in a bad way. It's not like hey, look at me. It's just sharing the content that you want to share, sharing the problem that you solve, sharing your solution and sharing it to a specific market. Like all it takes are these small little things over a long period of time. And that's how you build a brand. You don't build a brand overnight. There's no flash branding, right? It's a process. So for me, the stick figures is something that is a lot of fun. And I'll have people reach out to me with quotes and I'll draw for them, or I'll meet influential people and I'll listen to what they say. And then I'll flip around and send a quote and tag them and be like, whoa. So
here's
my
the stick figure favor that I'll ask. And then I'll get to the last comment on rapid round questions. The favor that I'm going to ask to the Ginger MC, Mr. Ryan Foland, is send me a unique stick figure drawing for the Thrive Aloud podcast that will be the cover art for this particular episode. And I think that's what we'll use when we blast it out and we market the heck out of this thing in social media and Instagram and all that stuff, because that would be really cool, along with your one. I already have your picture. So, but we'll pair that together, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. Sound like a plan?
So my challenge for you, what is one thing that stuck out for the show that is a sort of a sentence blurb of, what is the sentence? Because it's all about coming up with a quote and then the picture comes from the quote.
BRAND-O-LUTION and even the words that we hit, BRAND-O-LUTION 313, and maybe this other thing, which I'm about to get to, which is really growing your brand, because that's really the key part of what you've always been about. And I'm going to ask this question as part of the show's main thing. I always ask the guest on the show, Ryan, when you have trouble thriving, who do you turn to get back on the thriving track?
So who do I turn to get back on the thriving track? So her name is Mother Earth, and that is no joke. I mentioned that I love to sail, and there's nothing more peaceful and calm than being at or on the ocean. If I'm stressed out at work, I will step outside and go look at some flowers. Sounds cheesy, but it's not. And one of my favorite pieces of Mother Nature are the clouds. I'm just such I'm a cloud geek. I'm a clique, whatever you want to call it. Like, I will just, wherever I'm at, I'm always looking up and I'm like, oh, wow, look at those clouds. And it's like this, a masterpiece that continues to change. The colors change, the tones change. It just taps into all of like my artistic tendencies. And I sit there like a tourist and I just like start taking pictures of clouds. And then usually at the end of the week, I'll take my top 4 pictures of clouds and I'll tweet them out. And I'll be like, don't forget to look up. So ecotherapy for me is the one thing that revives me. And I've been classically known to just, jump in the water or go to the beach or something to that extent. But I cannot stress the importance of that when it comes to creativity. And a little side story, there's a lot of studies around the fact that nature helps you to be creative. It helps you to thrive. And it's only in a relaxed state that you can be creative. A stressed brain is not a creative brain. And even if you just go down to a park or something and you chill out, turn your phone off, and you just sort of, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It's like, it's just such a peaceful, calming experience. So I turn to Mother Earth, and it's one of my clutches.
By the way, you just helped us kind of figure out the 4th image that you would put in this drawing between BRAND-O-LUTION 313, Grow Your Brand, and Mother Earth. Love it. You've already done it. See, you filled out the artwork. So
Bam.
give us all the plugs, Ryan, where people can learn more about you, your business, and everything that you do. This is the chance for you to plug away all the fun places that we can find you.
Sure. So as a personal branding expert, of course, I'm going to send you to my personal website, and that's ryanfoland.com. That is the junction. That is the train station. And then from there, you can find all my social. I live on Twitter. That is my favorite platform by far. I'm sort of still trying to warm up to the other platforms. And my business is Influence Tree. So if you want to grow influence like a tree, you go to influencetree.com. And then I want to give a shout out to Josh Linkner and his 3-Ring Circus, because that's how we connected. And it was really a fascinating day. So shout out to Josh Linkner, who has by far the coolest speaker wheel ever. And I'm so jealous of it. And I'm working on making it there. But check out Josh. He's doing some amazing stuff. So those would be my plugs, myself and my company. And then Josh.
I love it. So I'm going to give you 2 more questions there. I'm going to give you the standard question that I always end every show with, and then I'm going to give an additional one because I'm so curious. The standard question that I love to wrap every show up with is, Ryan Foland, what is your all-time favorite movie?
The Never-Ending Story. Atreyu, Falcor. That's it. I'm going to have that song. Thank you, Lou. I'm going to have that song stuck in my head all day.
Oh, my God. Ryan Foland is the only person to ever musically have sung what their favorite movie of all time is. Okay, which is classic. The add-on additional one I wanted to ask, because I know you're at UC Irvine, and I will tell you that I played volleyball in college and used to follow a lot of the volleyball too. And one year, UC Irvine played UC Santa Cruz in the matchup. So I always joke about this. If an anteater were to meet a banana slug out in the open in a competition, who would win?
An anteater is the most ferocious creature on Earth. He is the creeper sleeper that you don't know. You have no idea what's happening inside that trunk. That tongue will come out and lash you 6 ways till sideways, and all you're going to hear is zot, 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 and your sluggishness will be sliced in half.
For the Thrive Loud listeners, just to let you know, the UC Irvine mascot is an anteater, and yes, the UC Santa Cruz is a banana slug, most famously identified and recognized in Pulp Fiction in the lovely T-shirt that John Travolta wears when they've met with the cleaner and they're cleaning out the car with the brain guts of one of their fellow colleagues. So anyway, Ryan Foland, this has been a total treat. A musical entourage. We've got some artwork coming. Lots of great lessons about branding. I hope you had fun on Thrive Loud. He's still singing.
I'm getting some background music for you.
You know what? I can insert that song as part of the opening here. I don't think that should be a problem.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that would, like especially the scene when like everything's happy and he's going, the music's popping, and it's like the nothing has been solved, and everybody's happy, and all because he's just reading a book. And at the end of the day, I think that's a fascinating, I got in Thrive. Like that was one of the reasons why I got so into reading, is like when you read something, you can create your own world. And in the same respect, the final thought is that you are the actor, the lead actor in your own story. And you have a personal brand, whether you know it or not. And if you don't think you have a brand, guess what? You're just not controlling the narrative. So whether you're somebody who's just starting or an executive at a C-level or even running a massive company, you are the actor in your own story. And as soon as you realize you can control the narrative, the whole world opens up. It's just like riding on Falcor, wind blowing through your hair, and the big old dog smile on a winged dragon as you're flying through the universe of whatever you want. That is the power of personal branding. It is the never-ending story, and it is your legacy at the end of the day.
Well said, my friend. Great stuff. Ryan Foland, thank you so much for coming on Thrive Loud. This was awesome, and maybe giggle way too many times. Hope you had fun.
I did, Lou. We'll talk to you later.
You got it, man. And to all the Thrive Loud listeners out there, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.